Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Bell and you're watching Head to Head on uatv. Now, March the 14th in Ukraine marks the Day of Ukrainian Volunteers, a special date that was established by the Ukrainian Parliament last year to honour the first defenders of Ukraine who voluntarily went to the front line to protect its country from Russian aggression. Now, in total, nearly 40 volunteer battalions were formed back in 2014, and now they're part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Now, I'm pleased to say to talk about the experience of making a difficult choice in his life and what does the Day of Ukrainian Volunteer mean to him. We're joined in the studio today by Sergeant Andriy Kulish. He represents the National Guard of Ukraine. Hello, Andriy. Thank you for coming in and congratulations on your official holiday.
Thank you.
Well, let's start. There's so much to talk about. I mean, I think firstly, could you talk a bit about your experience when you joined the volunteer battalion and perhaps how much training you had and how much previous experience you had and up until joining at that point?
Well, I joined the voluntary battalion of police special forces called Kyiv 1. And before that, I really had no military background. I was like a common civilian person.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've had to make this choice because my country was in danger, and all of my friends, they also joined voluntary battalions. I couldn't just sit and watch, them fighting, while my my family and myself were. So
you had friends as well who were joining at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. One of my friends served in the Donbass battalion. They were taken as prisoners. In Ilovaisk. And my friend spent like 119 days as a prisoner, and luckily he's been released in 2015. Yeah, and to me this day is dedicated to all of those courageous men and women who had no military experience, but they decided to defend our country, and a lot of them lost their lives defending their families and our.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of stories about volunteers who went into these military ranks. Many of them did have some basic training, but obviously you learnt a lot. How was the training for you when you first joined this sort of Kiev 1 battalion? Did you turn up on the first day and from start from square one almost? How was it?
Well, those volunteers who joined the battalion, they of course had to pass through preparation program. It was pretty basic, for all the battalions. But we had the special operations company within this battalion, and this company was deployed in more dangerous areas, more responsible areas, and we had some pretty tough training. But to me, it wasn't like. To me, it was more like a challenge.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I have to pass this program to be able to pay my debt to my country. In a dangerous areas like front lines.
Yeah, of course. And how long were you on the front line exactly?
We've spent 2 rotations. Every rotation lasted for 3 months.
Yeah, and also, if it was back in 2014, it would have been during some of the hottest points of the conflict, really. Certainly now there's a sort of cyclical pattern where some days there's a lot of attacks, some days not. But back then, it really was a full-blown sort of conflict every day. Can you tell us a bit about your time on the front line, and perhaps maybe a story or two about when you were there and the sorts of roles that you played?
Sure. Thing is, during the revolution, I participated as a public activist, and on the beginning of 2014, I had to escape with my family to Poland and receive medical treatment because of wounds I received on the Euromaidan. And by the end of the year, I decided to go back because my friends, they enlisted to voluntary battalions, and I decided to go back and defend my country. So I started serving from very beginning of 2015. It was a year that started with shelling of Mariupol, when a lot of civilians died because of Russian...
This was in January, wasn't it? At the beginning of the year, there was on the suburbs... yeah, I remember this. The suburbs of Mariupol. It was. Yes. I think there was a video as well that was viral online of... it was dash cam footage, I remember, from a car. And so this... So that was obviously sort of one of the sort of key points, wasn't it? So you were there or near there at the time?
Well, by that time I only joined the battalion, and we all watched this happening on the TV. We were preparing to go to like any place we could be like possibly sent to. And my battalion in 2015 participated in the counterattack in Mariinka. Well, it was pretty hot, period in terms of fighting, and later there were like attempts to occupy those towns by terrorists. My battalion also operated in Mariinka, Krasnohorivka, and Kurahovo. Mariinka and Krasnohorivka, those towns are situated on the very front line, and we had some, a bunch of shootouts. There were a lot of shellings. We also participated in infiltration operations.
So a lot of different tasks as well. I think also, I was also a journalist in Ukraine back in 2014, and what was incredibly interesting was how, before the war broke out, really Ukraine's armed forces were very ill-equipped, ill-trained. There had been a lot of corruption in the years leading up to the start of Russia's war in 2014. But actually it was the volunteer battalions who really got together in 2014, and since then they've slowly integrated into the official military ranks, you could say. So I think it'd be interesting to get your opinion on how much change has there been from your experience in the volunteer battalions as a volunteer fighter and moving into the official ranks. What sort of similarities and differences are there?
The biggest difference to me is that during the first years of war, volunteers, they weren't as much trained, prepared for fighting, but they had the spirit to fight. And currently those who decided to go on and joined like those official units to become like professional militaries. Currently we have much more experience, we have much more training, and we have much more cooperation with foreign militaries. Like we had instructors from United States, from Germany, from Israel, from Georgia, and Currently, Ukrainian Armed Forces are preparing to become like member of NATO.
Yeah.
And we are implementing all those standards required to enter the alliance. I can say that nowadays, of course, we have a lot of problems and we have a difficult path.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that we can solve all the problems. Yeah. And in the future, we will become strong army.
Yeah, and also I would imagine as well, sort of back in 2014, a lot of the volunteer fighters who went to the front line, whether that's along the Azov Sea, near Donetsk, just all along the front line, they really relied on other volunteers, sort of civilian volunteers, who supplied them not just with sort of weapons, but just basic things that you need. I mean, that must have changed obviously throughout the 4 years of war. Is that right? I mean,
yes. In fact, civilian volunteers they became our like guardian angels, because we had problems with supplies. We had problems pretty much with everything, and they brought us heaters in winter, for example, when sometimes we had like minus 35 Celsius.
Which is cold. I mean,
yeah, a bit. And they brought us a lot of things, important things, including letters from kids, which are, you know, one of my Facebook friends, Martin Brest, he used to call them bulletproof drawings, you know? Yeah. Because we used to took those drawings and you know, stick them all around the place.
Yeah. Well, I guess this was like a reminder of home, but also a motivation of what you were fighting for. I mean, did you find that a lot of the people who you were serving with, you know, what were their motivations for fighting for the country? I mean, what were they fighting for?
You see, there on the front lines and in those cities situated close to the front lines, we used to meet random people. Some of those people were supporting us. The others were like the others had more separatist views, and you know, it was really important to remind ourselves that there is a huge part of people, of Ukrainians, that support us and that trust in us. And those drawings were pretty much motivational. As for the reasons why people used to join voluntary battalions, of course, on the first place, I think it's the patriotism, you know. And of course, it's it was understanding that there will be nobody who will fight for you instead of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I told my family that I'm joining the voluntary battalion, and they began asking me, maybe like, why you? What can you change alone? You know, I said that I'm not alone, because if I refuse to go, and my friend refuses to go, then nobody will fight.
But also, a lot of people who went to fight at the front line, they did it for the future generations.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of the volunteer fighters had children, had grandchildren. That's why they went, ultimately.
Yeah, I guess so. Because when you realize that you are fighting for your own family and that there's really no way back, I guess this is the biggest motivation that you can have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andriy, for coming into our studio. And once again, congratulations on Volunteer Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was Andriy Kulish. He's a Ukrainian volunteer and a sergeant at the National Guard of Ukraine. Thanks for watching UATV.